It has been 1 week since the suits returned to Ottawa. Spark Street is bumping. The drinks are flowing. There's a party every night. Our banker-in-chief is back at it, and politics has returned to the city that always sleeps. Nature is healing, and it feels so good.
My mother taught me never to be late, so please forgive me for my late arrival to this session. I had some meetings with extremely important people, and I thank the Prime Minister for calling a prompt by-election. I wonder if one day he might regret that decision, but...
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure I speak for all parliamentarians in welcoming the member for Battle River Crowfoot back to the House of Commons. He may notice a few things have changed since he was here last.
We have a Liberal Prime Minister breaking promises, making excuses, running massive deficits with costs, crime, and chaos out of control.
He missed the largest tax cut for 22 million Canadians. He missed the cut on the GST for new homes. He missed eliminating all federal barriers to trade. He missed, I hope I'll have another opportunity to finish a very long list of what the Leader of Opposition.
But Mark Carney is right. A lot has happened.
Prime Minister Mark Carney announcing Canada has officially recognized the state of Palestine.
A big change coming to the federal government. Chrystia Freeland has officially resigned from cabinet.
The Liberal government has tabled new legislation to crack down on hate crimes.
Let me tally this for you. In the past 6 months, Mark Carney promised to stand strong against President Trump's tariffs. We are still deep in a trade war. Mark Carney promised to create new jobs. Last month alone, 66,000 jobs disappeared. Mark Carney promised the most ambitious housing plan since the Second World War. We'll see about that one, but he can't get by on promises alone. Now it is do or die time for Carney. This episode, I am talking to Politico's Mickey Djuric. Mickey is always in the back rooms of parliaments, sneaking around, getting on weird little details that other reporters miss. The last time we talked was actually election night, and a lot has changed since then. So today we are going to break down what's happened this fall sitting, who's in, who's out, and if the Carney honeymoon phase is officially over. Let's get into it. Mickey, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been a really crazy week here in Ottawa. Lots of parties, lots of socializing. So I'm recovering from the work and the partying.
It's a tough life.
Yeah.
Speaking of craziness, I saw you in the bowels of West Block last Monday. It was first day of question period. It was insane with protesters and press all around. It felt like a really crummy version of a red carpet. Instead of like paparazzis, it was protesters and security and people walking all around. It gave me the impression that this feels more important than other fall sessions. Am I making that up, or did you get that sense too?
No, I absolutely got that sense. It seems like that Canadians are really paying attention to this city more so than others. I think obviously it's because we're in this trade war, so to speak, with the United States. We also haven't been really sitting that much here in Parliament. And even when we have been sitting in the last few years, the Conservatives were so disruptive with motions that the Liberal government couldn't really pass a lot of stuff. So this is the first time that it seems like everyone is back to actually get stuff done. Everyone says that they're going to collaborate, and we'll see how that shakes out in the next few months.
Mm-hmm. And what's the vibe like from the staffers and other Hill people? I mean, you mentioned the parties. I feel like I'm always too tired at the end of the day to go to these events. But you guys always do. So what are they like? What are people talking about?
Yeah, Politico loves to be everywhere.
You guys really do.
But the staff there, I think they're a little more burnt out. I mean, a lot of them have been, working in government for 10 years now. So a lot of people are exhausted. They just came off of an election. But on top of that, they have a boss, Prime Minister Mark Carney, who is more demanding than the previous boss that they had. So there's not a lot of room for mistakes. Mark Carney is very strict in his rules. He wants people to be on time. We saw Justice Minister Sean Fraser running to the cabinet room the other day because he did not want to be late, which was not a concern of his under Justin Trudeau.
And I do hate to run, everyone. We'll see you soon, and I try not to run away from you guys.
And these ministers aren't really showing up to parties like they did under the previous government. There's obviously some kind of directive that maybe it doesn't look so good to be drinking with journalists. So less partying for them, and it seems like more work so far.
I heard a rumor that people in the Prime Minister's office aren't allowed to wear brown shoes because it's unprofessional. Have you heard that?
Oh, yeah, we have heard that. And we actually we are always looking at what shoes people are wearing in and out of the cabinet rooms. I think it comes from his love of UK culture because the UK, brown shoes are a huge no-no over there. But I can attest that I have seen the housing minister come in with brown shoes. I've seen people walk in with sneakers. So I can't confirm if it's true or not, but I have seen more than just black shoes coming in and out of the cabinet and caucus room.
It's unprofessional, really, if you ask me. Anything but
Really?
black polished tuxedo shoes.
Carney often does wear black polished shoes, though, I will say that.
Okay, so there has been a lot of announcements from the Liberal government. I want to break a few of them down. First off, just this past weekend, Canada recognized the state of Palestine.
Canada intends to recognize the state of Palestine at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025.
Yeah, so Prime Minister Mark Carney declared on Sunday that Canada is officially recognizing the state of Palestine, and this marks a major shift in the country's foreign policy. Before, Canada previously supported a two-state solution, but they believe that would be achieved in a negotiation between Israeli and Palestinian leaders. But Carney is saying that can no longer be the case, and he accused Israel of violating international law through its expansion in West Bank, and what he says is causing a devastating and preventable famine in Gaza. Carney said it's now the avowed policy of the current Israeli government that there will be no Palestinian state. And he essentially is recognizing Palestinian statehood so that no one can refute the fact that the state of Palestine can exist. But he also mentioned that he does support Israel as well. There's a lot of politics at play in this as well, because leading up to the April election, we saw hundreds of candidates running for MPs, including many Liberal incumbents who had endorsed a pro-Palestinian platform. They called for a recognition of Palestinian statehood, and some Toronto area Liberals believe that the party's foreign policy actually cost them a majority in the last election and lost them key seats in the greater Toronto area. So as much as they're shifting their foreign policy, this also benefits the Liberal Party in certain areas of Canada as well.
That's really interesting. And if I'm not mistaken, this is more in line with how the UK and Australia has approached the conflict. Is that right?
Absolutely. The Canadian government on Sunday made this announcement in lockstep with United Kingdom and also Australia. Obviously, in July, it was France that said that they would do the same thing coming up at the United Nations General Assembly. By the time this airs, that France might have done that as well. But Canadian officials behind the scenes are making it adamant that no one is influencing their foreign policy. They are saying their decision to recognize Palestine is completely their own choice, and they're not being influenced by any of their allies or what any other country is telling them what to do. And they're saying this is their sovereign foreign policy moving forward.
One thing that I can't stop thinking about is that this is drastically straying from the United States' position on the conflict. And to me, that sounds like it could be a point of tension, especially when you're thinking about tariffs and just our relationship with the US. Should we be worried about how this decision will affect our relationship with Trump?
Yeah, that's interesting you brought that up, because I was worried about our neighbor's reaction as well, because U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he previously criticized this decision, saying that it will just embolden Hamas.
It makes other elements like Hamas feel more emboldened. It actually has made it harder.
But I spoke to government officials within the Liberal government, and They said that Donald Trump did not speak to Mark Carney about this issue and did not warn Carney against making such a move. So Canadian officials do not believe that the decision will impact its negotiation with the U.S. regarding their new economic and security deal that they're currently working on. And these officials say that the Liberal government officials say that they work with the U.S. on a lot of common areas, including in the Middle East, but that the U.S. recognizes that we're going to have our own policies and we're going to have our own direction, and that this is well understood amongst our counterparts down in the South.
That's really encouraging, actually. So it's more of a little Marco issue and less a King Donald issue.
Well, I will say, though, both leaders, President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Mark Carney, they will be at the UN General Assembly this week, and the two are not scheduled to meet. So take that at what you will.
Yeah, that kind of surprises me. But is there anything you can infer from that decision?
The Liberal government, they say that there's lots of leaders that they don't get to usually engage with, and so they're focusing their time more so on leaders that they don't see often as opposed to the ones they do see. But sometimes actions speak louder than words in politics.
Yeah, totally. New friends instead of old friends, I guess.
Yeah.
Sean Fraser's been busy. You mentioned him running to question period to not be late, but he has had a lot on the go recently. There's some news with the notwithstanding clause that a lot of premiers are very upset with. What's going on here?
Yeah, he has had such a busy week. He's upset some journalists along the way as well. But I'm sure we'll get to that. He's as Attorney General of Canada, he has asked Canada's Supreme Court to essentially limit the use of the notwithstanding clause and limit how it can be used. And this is in regards to Quebec's secularism law. And that law prohibits public sector workers in positions of authority, including teachers and judges, from wearing religious symbols on the job. And Quebec actually used a notwithstanding clause when it passed this law. So the notwithstanding clause essentially shields laws from constitutional challenges for 5 years. But Sean Fraser and the Liberal government feel that there should be limits on how that can happen. And Conservative MPs and premiers have said such a move would make the system operate more like the United States, where the top court would make decisions on what laws are allowed or not, should they ever be challenged. And provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan say that the notwithstanding clause is important because it gives them sovereignty over their own laws. And they just are viewing Sean Fraser's ask essentially as another example of government overreach. And Alberta doesn't even necessarily support Quebec secularism law. They said it's about standing shoulder to shoulder with Quebec's constitutional right to invoke the notwithstanding clause. And Premier Smith is accusing Mark Carney of threatening national unity, which is really interesting because so far all the premiers have been pretty united with Prime Minister Mark Carney ever since he became Prime Minister. So this ask of the top court from Sean Fraser could risk not having premiers stand shoulder to shoulder with each other as they have in the past few months.
To what end is Sean Fraser trying to do this? Is it just to grant the government more power? And
it seems like that the federal government is concerned over some of people's own charter rights when it comes to how this notwithstanding clause is being used. We saw Saskatchewan invoke it, requiring parental consent for students under the age of 16 to use their preferred names or pronouns at school. The secularism law, which concerns, people wearing maybe religious garb to their place of work. The federal government feels like that could trample on people's charter rights as well, even though the notwithstanding clause also is baked into the charter and is part of the charter. So I think it's basically just an argument of protect from the federal government side is ensuring that people's charter rights are being protected even when this notwithstanding clause is used.
Interesting. You mentioned Sean Fraser upset some journalists. What happened?
So Sean Fraser, he introduced his hate crime legislation, but he held a press conference on the Hill before the bill officially dropped, or essentially the bill came out the second that he started holding his press conference. And so here he was making this flashy announcement about how, they're going to be banning hate symbols such as swastikas and Hamas symbols in the criminal code. And none of the journalists had even seen this bill. And here they were supposed to ask all these questions. So he took a lot of heat from a lot of the journalists in the press gallery for, tabling such an important piece of legislation and not having any journalists informed. So that makes it so much harder for us to even ask questions because we haven't even read this piece of legislation. And this is something that this government has, has done in the past under Trudeau. But, with something like this, it's frustrating for us.
So sending us a way to look at something while you're standing on stage taking questions about it doesn't help.
Okay, so sorry, what is there a question?
Can you tell us what they are?
Oh yeah, you want to know each of the different sentencing guidelines?
That'd be nice.
Yeah, sure. So let me flip open to the specific page.
Can you just walk me through the hate crime bill that's been tabled?
So first of all, there's many types of hate crimes in Canada that already exist. For example, intentionally promoting anti-Semitism. But while some of these offenses have been addressed in cases before the Supreme Court of Canada, there has never been a dedicated law that specifically targets the use of hateful symbols. So as I mentioned earlier, this law would essentially outlaw the Nazi symbol, other symbols related to terrorism. But what that does, that doesn't mean just because these symbols are displayed that someone would be charged with a hate crime. It would have to be tied with the willful promotion of hatred. So, for example, if journalists had photographed these images, or if these images are shown for academic purposes, they won't be charged, and it will be up to police and prosecutors to decide when that threshold has been crossed. And actually, a lot of journalists were expecting that this bill would include some kind of bubble zone for protests at places of worship, because we've seen Muslim and Jewish groups both call for federally regulated bubble zones. But Sean Fraser came out and said that that's more of the jurisdiction of municipalities and provinces. So he said instead what they're doing is they're looking at the criminal code and they're making up new laws to give police better tools to charge people with hate crimes should they show up to certain places and say certain show certain symbols. And he also said that it's important for the federal government to also protect freedom of expression. They don't want to crack down on speech, but they also want to protect people from having to see some of these hateful symbols.
Bail reform is something that we've been talking a lot about in the press and in the public discourse in the last little while. And there's very competing visions of what bail reform should look like in Canada. I mean, there was some heavy sparring in the House over it.
Just about everybody in this country is demanding bail reform, and yet the Liberals block it at every turn. Every single day, they delay. More rapists, gangsters, and repeat offenders are dumped back on our streets to victimize innocent Canadians. Why are the Liberals obstructing fixing the broken bail system and choosing to shield dangerous criminals rather than protecting Canadian families? Why don't they do something about it today?
Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, with respect to my honourable colleague, I'm sure she knows that we are moving forward with bail reform legislation that will be tabled in the House this fall.
What are those competing visions, and what have the Liberals kind of set out as their intentions?
Yeah, so crime is so interesting politically because obviously Pierre Poilievre ran on a platform of cracking down on crime, and this is why he also was able to grow his party, especially in seats in the GTA, where Greater Toronto area, where crime is a huge issue for a lot of people, as is in the rest of the country. The Liberals also view crime as a reason of why they lost some of their seats in the Toronto area, in addition to some of their foreign policy decisions in the past. So crime really, really is a political hot topic right now. And both the Liberals and Conservatives have their own vision of what they should do to tackle crime. And both of them agree that there needs to be some level of bail reform. But essentially what we're going to see is the Conservatives and the Liberals presenting two completely different bills when it comes to bail reform. We don't know, the Liberal bill isn't tabled yet, so we don't know what's going to be in that bill. But the Conservatives, they're essentially proposing to create a new major offenses category. They also want to see a three strikes rule, which they ran on in the last election, where people could be denied bail altogether. And they want it to be the case when it comes to certain crimes, like let's say sexual assault or kidnapping or human trafficking, firearms offenses, that if someone is charged with these offenses, then they would have to prove then why they should be released on bail. So a reverse onus situation. Whereas the Liberal government, they acknowledge they have to impose stricter bail conditions. This is what most premiers of Canada are also calling for, including Ontario Premier Doug Ford. He has a really close relationship with Mark Carney. The two have discussed bail reform on the phone. They've discussed it in past meetings, but because the Liberal bill isn't tabled yet, we don't know what they're essentially proposing, but there might have to be some collaboration on this point down the line. We are in a Liberal minority government. It doesn't appear that the Liberals are working at all with more of the progressive parties. I've spoken to the NDP. I've spoken to the Green Party. They're not talking with the Liberal governments at all right now. The Bloc Québécois doesn't appear to be engaging with the Liberal minorities. And as we saw with the Nation Building Projects Bill of C5, it was the Conservative government who had propped up the Liberal government to get that piece of legislation passed. So the Conservatives and Liberals are already acknowledging that they're going to have to collaborate on certain things going forward to make the House of Commons work, to make democracy work. And I feel like bail reform can be one of those issues where maybe the Conservatives get some wins and the Liberals get some wins, because it clearly is an important issue for both parties right now.
I mean, it's so contentious and it's so top of mind for Canadians and for voters, but that just seems to me like it's going to be a really, really big issue in the coming weeks, and it's going to require a lot of debate. So that's something that I think I will be watching closely.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with a federal budget coming in November, the Liberal government might have to make some concessions around bail reform that maybe they otherwise wouldn't have, just in order to get support on the budget down the line. So I will definitely be watching closely what happens. And the Liberal government did promise to table their bail reform bill in October. So that's, that could be, pretty quickly here.
Yeah. Burning the midnight oil? That's the saying, right? Yeah. It's funny you talk about them not working with some of the more progressive parties, and I'm even seeing mixed signals on whether the Conservatives are planning on working with the Liberals at all. I mean, Andrew Scheer said that they're very much willing to cooperate, but from what I've seen in the House, it really doesn't seem like it. So is that being signaled to you? Is Andrew Scheer correct?
I think, you know what, they're saying both things. We have the government House leader, Steve McKinnon, has also said the same thing. We're willing to work with the Conservatives, but we'll see what they do. So there's been a lot of finger pointing. So that's why I think some of these bills, like the bail reform bill, are going to be so telling, because it's going to force these political parties, these MPs, to show their cards, where they're going to have to start walking the talk, so to speak.
The last kind of thing I want to talk about from the legislative side is the housing announcement, $13 billion to build 4,000 homes on federal land. I mean, it's a good thing, but I can't stop thinking that $13 billion should build a lot more homes than 4,000. It seems like a drop in the barrel, and I think probably the Conservatives are picking up on that too. I mean, am I missing something here, or?
No, that is, yeah, you're right. So the Canadian government, they started this Build Canada Homes Agency, which Pierre Poilievre is saying, is just more bureaucracy, which he was vehemently against during the last election. But so they're starting this new department, and essentially the idea is that Ottawa will bring land, money, and faster approvals to the tables for homes, while the private sector brings in its builders, materials, financing, and then they're hoping this whole mashup will, double housing construction and bring prices down while tackling homelessness. But yes, $13 billion is a hefty figure. And we haven't seen anything tangible yet. So it's hard to determine how beneficial this will be. And also, it's only going to be in 6 communities across the country. There's Nova Scotia, Quebec, Ottawa, Toronto, Winnipeg, and Edmonton. So 6 cities essentially are going to be benefiting from this $13 billion. But this is part of, I guess, what we've seen with Prime Minister Mark Carney. He does make these lofty promises, but just like we've seen with the trade war and even this nation building bill, we've yet to see a lot of these things come to fruition. And so these next few months in Parliament are going to be really important because a lot of Canadians, I think, are expecting to see some tangible things out of this government. They put their faith in the Liberal government, and now they want to feel it.
Yeah, results better be coming quick for the Liberals' sake, because I think a lot of people are holding their breath right now. I want to talk about Chrystia Freeland quickly. From what I've heard, I heard the rumors weeks ago that this has been a long time coming. I think it was kind of an open secret that she was on the outs, especially for people in your circles. Are there any other hints at kind of a cabinet shuffle? I've been watching Question Period a lot these days, and some Liberal cabinet ministers, it seemed, are just getting steamrolled in Question Period. I'm thinking specifically about Immigration Minister Lena Diab and Minister of Energy Tim Hodgson. Is there any other kind of cabinet shuffle rumors going around? Is that something that reporters like yourself are paying close attention to?
Yeah, absolutely. But I will say, the Lena Diab, she is getting just heckled. And Michelle Rempel-Gardner the other day had to shout at her from across the room saying, "Wake up, Lena," because she was getting asked a question and was just sitting there, shuffling her papers around. But they are going after these new, even though she's been an MP for a while, they are going after her. They're going after Gregor Robertson, the new housing minister. And it's definitely part of the Conservative tactic to highlight maybe how new they are to the role. Everyone knows that Prime Minister Mark Carney has short patience for this kind of thing. He expects people to know their file and know their file well. And it appears that the Conservatives are trying to highlight some of the imperfections within the Liberal government. And that's actually why I've been personally hearing about cabinet shuffle rumors ever since Mark Carney was sworn in a second time. Was it May? It was early May, because a lot of the Liberal caucus were just stunned that some of these people were appointed as cabinet minister, which obviously took in politics and took in regions of Canada to represent certain regions of Canada. So a lot of people have been hinting at or talking about a cabinet shuffle for a while. And this now ups the ante with Freeland getting this new role. Special representative to Ukraine, which people in this town are gossiping that it's a fake job because she'll still be in Toronto. She'll still she won't get new staff. Doesn't appear that she's getting more money. So a lot of people have kind of been laughing at this role, even though she has been one of Canada's staunchest advocates of Ukraine. At the cabinet table, and obviously helped lead the Western world's sanctions against Russia. But so we're seeing these old school, these old guard politicians from the Trudeau era getting these new appointments. David Lametti, Principal Secretary to Prime Minister Mark Carney. He's going to be Canada's ambassador to the UN. And there's also rumors that Bill Blair, former defense minister, is expected to be an envoy in Europe, as is Jonathan Wilkinson, former energy minister. But if Bill Blair and Jonathan Wilkinson leave, their departure will likely kick off a by-election race in BC, North Vancouver, and then Toronto and Scarborough, 2 relatively safe seats for the Liberals. So it does appear that, a cabinet shuffle could be cooking.
It's funny because these attacks in Question Period, they're really effective, especially in the short clip era we're living in. It's so easy to make someone look foolish online.
Yeah. It's interesting too with Gregor Robertson, he doesn't appear to speak French. So anytime he's asked a question in French by a Conservative MP or Bloc Québécois MP, then you have Stephen Guilbeault, the identity minister, suddenly standing up in the House of Commons talking about housing. And it's it's interesting how many people on the front bench don't speak French and only speak English. I've been meaning to do a count, but there's definitely several of them.
What does everything we've talked about so far tell you about how Carney is approaching this fall term? I know he needs results quick.
He definitely needs results quick, but what's interesting is I've been talking to several pollsters, and all the polls essentially say the same thing, is that Mark Carney is way more popular than his Liberal Party is. So, he's kind of still enjoying this honeymoon grace period that not a lot of his MPs necessarily are. So there is pressure to deliver. But on top of that, a lot of Canadians are veering off from the trade war issue as being their number one concern, where it's pocketbook issues that are top of mind for most Canadians, whether it's jobs, whether it's the economy, whether it's housing. These are all issues that affect people's wallets. And so people are really going to be looking to Mark Carney and this Liberal government to start delivering on results. And I think that's going to be a huge test in November when we see Mark Carney's first budget.
If you could just walk me through what Canadians should be looking for in there, and then what you're expecting, and then maybe is there something in there that the Conservatives are looking specifically to attack?
Oh, the Conservatives will be attacking the deficit for sure. I think it's an easy win for them. And we've had Mark Carney come out already and kind of brace the public for what's to come. I believe last year's fiscal budget was about $48 billion deficit, and Mark Carney has come out and said it's going to be significantly larger. So we're going to be looking at a big deficit come November, and a lot of that has to do with an increase in defense spending. We promised to increase defense, especially with Donald Trump in office, where the government has brought in certain measures to tackle the trade war. And then they've also previewed that there's likely going to be job cuts coming to the federal public service. Mark Carney has insisted that's through attrition.
And I think there's also got to be a lot of things that progressives will be looking for in the budget, like climate stuff that I think people might be quite disappointed with. So, yeah, is there anything kind of on the progressive side that you think will take a back seat here?
I think for the NDP, at least, I think the federal public service cuts will be huge. And yes, absolutely, the environments, we'll see if there's any regulations that are cut in this upcoming budget, or if there's any environmental incentives that are cut. But Carney has been all about the economy. That's the only thing that he seems to be wanting to focus on. So it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if services were cut, even though during this election he promised not to touch them. I think that's a big question mark here in Canada. Okay, you promised not to cut. You're calling it an austerity budget. We're going to have a huge deficit, but it seems like something has to give. And I think also with the NDP, I think a big concern is around pharmacare and dental care. They're going to want to see that money is still there for the provinces that signed up. And so they also will probably like to see money in there for the expansion of pharmacare, which it doesn't appear that the government really wants to do at this time.
Do you anticipate strong public reaction to the budget? Like, could this be the thing that shakes the ground for Carney?
I think it definitely could if there are things in there that, if there are services there that are cut. I already hear from some friends, some people in other provinces that they are worried about cuts to some of these services that they do get as Canadians. And I don't think people want to see any of that going away. And I will say, I didn't mention, but there's also the GST. They are reducing the personal income tax for Canadians as well, which will also impact the budget significantly.
Well, Mickey, thank you so much for joining. You do great work, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, that is it, everybody. Please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and please keep checking back for videos. And you know what? If you want to share it with your friends, if you want to share it with your grandma, please do that too. Thank you so much.